So let's go up here. I'm going to fill this. I just like to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to fill the background with gray like we have done in other things. Let's see. Yeah. And now I'm going to go in here. I'm going to grab my magic eraser tool. And I'm just basically touching these things or painting over them. And it just gets rid of these things. Does that make sense? Now, here's tolerance. This one is contiguous pixels, right? So if I let go of that, contiguous pixels, if I remember right, is basically it's going to start the ones that are all adjacent to each other, okay? If I go, let's turn it off. And let's look at another thing too. Okay, so you can see it jumped in. What it did was is it selected some colors and then it went, oh, there's some of those colors in that window, and it got rid of them, okay, which is not really what I want. When I put it on contiguous, it doesn't do that. It sort of finds the edges, and it's basing it more on trying to find the edges more or less. Does that make sense? Now, let's look at this. Because this is across the board in Photoshop. Anywhere you see a tolerance, let's go 100. And you can see it's again it started eating into the building because the tolerance is just too high. So sometimes with these kind of tools, you got to come in here and sort of figure them out. You know, try different ones. I'm gonna try 40. That's not too bad. And I don't have my, so I want my grayscale on here. So I can see how good or not good I'm doing. Oops. I gotta be on the right layer here. So when I get it to this point, if it's pretty good, yeah, it ate into this edge, so that's still, the tolerance is still too high. Now, if I was actually separating something like this, I probably wouldn't use this tool, I'd probably just use the pen tool. Does that make sense? Okay. There's some places where it comes in handy. I don't really use it that much. I just show it to you because I just want you guys to, you know, I don't like to make the tools for you, or the choice for you, which tools you might want to use. So let's go to this one down here, which is kind of similar, and really similar. And here I'm going to go option. Oops, the wrong layer again. So let's fill this again. I'm going to fill this with a little brighter color. Let's see if I can get this to work. So what it's doing here, I'm just painting out, doing the same thing basically, but I'm painting out the background. This tool down, see it went over a little bit. I've got it on find edges. Let's try contiguous. That's a little better. Contiguous is working a little better. So where you're seeing this, yellow is my layer underneath. So just I like to see in real time if it's making good selections, and this is making okay ones. Basically, the background one is designed specifically. I've seen people use this a little bit with hair, but it's kind of funny because they never get it quite. It's never really that great. And again, if you're going to do, the more complex the object gets, the more you're going to have to play with the tolerance right here. Okay? So a lot of times you have to just, it's sort of like the magic wand tool, which I almost never use. The magic wand tool, you really have to dial in the tolerance. Because if you put like 100, it's going to just select everything, more or less. But if you're going to use it, you have to sort of use it, you know, where you're dialing in the tolerance. Same thing with these. This one, I mean, it's okay. But I've seen people using this, and they're showing how to do it with hair, and it's never all that great. Because when I look at a hair selection, I go, why would you not just make a channel selection? Does that make sense? The channel selection works really good. These tools, some of these tools in Photoshop, again, I could probably go find somebody who's doing something really interesting with this tool. But if I talk to 100 designers, they're all going to tell me they don't use this that much. But it can be handy just for a quick thing. Does that make sense? So pull up. Oh, by the way, I gave you a document. I gave you some files in Canvas. Just download this. I think this file's in there. and then we'll jump over to another thing. Okay, so let's look at this guy, this Batman thing. And I'm going to go, you guys remember when he did edit, define brush preset, correct? So now I'm going to make a selection here. Let's just try that. And I'm going to go edit, define pattern. I'm going to say okay. Deselect it. I'm going to go over here, make sure I'm on a new layer. And I'm going to go right here. It lives with your clone stamp because this is the brother to clone stamp tool, right? Or a sibling or whatever. And I'm going to go, oops. Let's go up here, right here to my little swatch thing. And there's my Batman right there. And then I'm going to go, let's go bigger. And it's going to tile it. The reason it's tiling it is because I have it right here to align. That's the align tool. Okay? Let's get rid of this. So this one's not really aligning them because I turned it off. So I'm just painting over them. So I'm going to turn that back on. And it just lines them up. Okay? Now, let's take one of these tools because it can be handy for this kind of thing. So I've got a rough brush here. That's probably too rough. Hang on. Let's try this one. So what it's going to do is I'm using this really rough brush. It's going to paint it using that brush. Does that make sense? Let me get one that's a little more readable. This one, though, is going to come in handy. I'll show you something here in a second. Let's go. I'm trying to find one that's rough enough. Okay, let's try this one. It will put down the image with that brush, which is kind of cool. Okay, so I could get an interesting effect with it. Now, another thing with this, because I always look at these things and I go, okay, that's fine, it could do that. But then I go, what else can I do with it? So let's take this. And let's go, I'm just going to take something random. And I'm going to go edit, define pattern, bird, texture. I'm going to go back over to my other thing, and I'm going to go, now let's take that really loose brush. Okay, so we're on our clone stamp tool, and I'm going to take that really weird one I had here. And what sometimes I use these for is because it's, and I'm going to make this so it's not lining up. Do you see how I'm getting a lot of random texture again? Okay, so I might take, this is a really good way, I love doing this. I'll do this and I'll set up this random texture and I'll start pulling things out of it. Okay, this one's really good actually. So I might take this, I might squash it. Oops. I might squash it down. I might take another rough eraser, just a regular eraser, only I'm going to do it with a rough brush. Hopefully I can find one. Let's try this one. And I'm going to kind of shape this a little bit. And again, if I take this and I put it back here, let's take a color. I'm going to assign a color to it. Let's go a little darker. Maybe go a little lighter or a little bluer. And pull back the saturation. Go a little lighter. And then I might come in here and go, and I'd have to put a ground texture. I'm just going to put another thing. I could start to create, I could use this to start to create an organic hillside. Does that make sense? Now, I'd have to come in here now and manipulate it a little bit because I don't want it too uniform. And I also want whatever I'm going to do here, okay? But what it's going to do, again, it's going to give me like a nice starting point and give me something really natural. Does that make sense? Which it's not yet. I could go up here to edit, transform, warp, and I could reshape the mountain a little bit. You know, and then once I start putting things in the foreground, once I start putting I don't know, some kind of ground thing. Again, I throw colors down here and I don't worry about it because I know I'm going to adjust them. This would actually be a little bluer, I would think. So let's do this. And I would probably throw some cool in this ground also. So it went cooled into here and then warmed up, and I could start to build a quick environment again. Does that make sense? It's a very simple tool, okay? So let's look at this. We got these apples. I'm going to go, let's see where it is here. Right here where your brushes are, you got your pencil tool, which is just self-explanatory. We've already talked about the mixer brush, and this one's a color replacement. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab blue, a really weird blue. I've got this on color. I usually go, I think it's the middle one. Let me see. Yeah, I think it's this one, the middle one. And then contiguous again. And then here's a tolerance. So let's go. Needs more. And it just goes right in, and it'll usually go, especially when it has this much contrast, it'll go right up to the edge for me usually. It went a little over there. Now another thing, if you look at it, it's hard to see it probably. So let's go a little bigger with the brush. See how it's got that little dot in the middle? So I can go pretty big here. By the way, I'd select out that stem so I didn't hit it. And if I tell it, it did go over a little bit there. But that little X, that little crosshairs right there is kind of telling it where I'm grabbing my, what I want it to cover, more or less. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah? You also got to be careful. Like if I go to yellow on a dark value like this, it's not probably going to, it doesn't work all that great. I might be able to change the overlay and change that. But it's very simple. I put it on color. We're on color. Let's try hue. See, that's going even greener, really. Normally, I'm on color. Okay? No, that's really weird. Luminosity, no good. So I'm just going to keep it on color. So, what we want to do here is grab this guy, and I'm going to go here. Let's try this. Some colors work better than others, by the way. I'm going to knock this down a little bit. That's not that much. And I'm going to come in here. And you can see it keeps all my what do you call it? Reflections, all that kind of stuff, and it literally just, now, I have to be careful when I come to places like here, so let's do that. It will read edges pretty good, so let's try it here. Oops, yeah. A little over. I'm leaving. Let's try find edges and see how it does. I don't like it. It's too spotty. So I usually stick with hue or color. I'm sorry. I want to drop it down a little bit. I want to make this a little. What it usually does is if I sort of keep my crosshairs within the color part, it'll find the edges pretty good. Okay. Same thing here. but I still got to be a little bit careful. And you can see it just keeps all my information under there. It literally just changes the color. Very easy. Does that make sense? Let's try it. Okay. So up here in our window, all our palettes live here. I've got actions right here, okay? So it's right here. Here's my window. It's got a little play button on it. And I'm going to go, let's get rid of this. Now you've got some default ones here. So I'm just going to go right. So again, this looks just like your layers palette, right? Which a lot of things look like in here. And I want to make a folder. I'm going to say Mike. And then I'm going to go right here to make a new action, okay? And I'm going to get this. And what's going to happen here now, this function key thing, this will make sense in a minute. I could assign a function key to it if I want to. I can also color code it. I don't care about that. This is the folder. Or actually, that's the folder. And then I want it in this set, which is Mike. That's my folder. And I'm going to call this, we'll just call it, demo. And then I'm going to hit record, okay? And you can see this little thing lit up right there. So now I'm going to go here, and let's say I want to go, I don't know, maybe I want to make a sepia tone kind of thing. Let's pull this back. And maybe I want to take it, I don't know, maybe we'll go to our gradient map thing again. And I'll make this a little darker. Okay, and then let's go here. And let's just try some. And whatever. That's what I do. Then I'm going to go back here and hit OK. I'm going to go back here to my actions, and I'm going to go stop. So just like like an old tape recorder, basically. And I'm going to go. So that is there. Okay. So now I'm going to open up another document. I'm going to go to actions, and I'm going to hit demo, and I'm going to hit play. And it applies everything I just did, just like a recording, onto this thing. Why is this really a good function?